What makes a man rise from being a homeless painter to commanding millions of people with his words? How does one rejected dreamer become the most powerful and feared leader in the world, only to end his life in total isolation? This is the story of Adolf Hitler, a name that echoes through history as both a symbol of extraordinary ambition and terrifying darkness. But this is not a story of glorification. It's a story of human potential gone wrong, of how belief, discipline, and relentless vision can lift a person to unimaginable heights, and how ego, hatred, and obsession can destroy everything. Before the world knew him as the dictator, he was a struggling artist in Vienna, rejected, broke, and invisible. He slept on park benches, sold postcards to survive, and faced rejection after rejection. Yet something inside him refused to give up. He believed he was destined for more. That inner fire, that unshakable belief, became his greatest weapon. Hitler's journey proves one undeniable truth. The human mind is powerful beyond measure. It can build empires, inspire nations, and change history, for better or for worse. His story forces us to ask, what happens when ambition loses its purpose? When belief turns into blind obsession? In this video, we're not here to celebrate him, we're here to learn from him. To understand the power of vision, leadership, and mindset, and the danger of losing your humanity in the pursuit of power. Because every rise carries a lesson, and every fall carries a warning. Part 1. The Rejected Artist. The Early Struggles. Before Adolf Hitler became one of history's most feared names, he was just a young dreamer, a boy with a paintbrush, a head full of imagination, and a heart set on becoming an artist. He walked the streets of Vienna with nothing but a sketchbook and a burning desire to make his mark on the world. But life had different plans. Twice he applied to the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts, and twice they rejected him. They told him his drawings lacked talent. His dream, the one thing he lived for, was crushed in an instant. Most people would have given up. Most would have accepted defeat and faded into the background. But not him. Rejection didn't break him. It built something dangerous inside him, an unstoppable hunger to prove the world wrong. He slept in shelters, sold his drawings on street corners, and lived on the edge of survival. Every night hunger burned in his stomach, but a stronger hunger burned in his soul, the hunger to rise. Those cold nights on Vienna's streets taught him something powerful. The world doesn't care about your dreams until you make them real. He learned to rely only on himself. He learned discipline, silence, and the power of observation. He watched people, studied their fears, and understood what drove them. His failures became fuel. Every rejection became rage. Every pain became purpose. That's the thing about ambition. When it's crushed, it either dies or transforms into something unshakable. Hitler's early struggle teaches us a painful but powerful truth. Your darkest days are often the training ground for your greatest strength. He didn't know it then, but those rejections were shaping the man who would later shake the world. Part 2. The War Experience. Finding Purpose. When the guns of World War I roared across Europe, Adolf Hitler saw a chance, not just to serve his country, but to find meaning in a life that had rejected him. The struggling artist from Vienna picked up a rifle instead of a paintbrush, trading color for chaos, dreams for discipline. In the trenches of France, surrounded by mud, death, and despair, he discovered something he had never known before: purpose. For the first time, he belonged to something greater than himself. The war gave him structure, identity, and direction. He wasn't just another lost soul anymore. He was a soldier, loyal, fearless, and devoted. The man who had once wandered the streets alone now found pride in wearing a uniform. He volunteered for dangerous missions, carried messages under fire, and was awarded the Iron Cross for bravery. Amid the explosions and fear, he found clarity, that strength comes from discipline and purpose is born in pain. But there's a darker side to every transformation. The war also planted in him a dangerous seed, a belief that destiny favored the strong and crushed the weak. He saw suffering and power, and he decided he would never be powerless again. That belief became his obsession. He returned from the battlefield not just as a survivor, but as a man on a mission to rebuild, to rise, and to never bow to anyone again. The lesson is clear. Adversity can awaken a new version of you. When you face chaos, you either collapse or you evolve. Hitler's war experience shaped the leader he would become, disciplined, driven, and unshakable. But it also began the internal war between his ambition and his humanity, and that inner battle would soon change the course of history. Part 3. The Power of Words. The Rise as a Speaker. After the war, Germany was broken. Its economy collapsed, its people humiliated, its spirit crushed. Soldiers returned home not to celebration, but to chaos and hunger. Amid the ruins of defeat, one man was quietly rising, not with a gun, but with his voice. Adolf Hitler found himself drawn to political meetings where anger filled the air. He listened, observed, and then, one day, he spoke. His words cut through the noise like a blade. People turned. They listened. There was something magnetic in his tone, a strange mix of pain, passion, and power. He spoke not from paper, but from fire. He didn't have authority, money, or status, but he had conviction. Every word carried emotion, every sentence carried belief. He spoke to people's pain, to their frustration, to their broken pride. He gave them something they had lost, hope. And that's where his true power was born. The power of communication. The ability to move hearts, to awaken sleeping spirits, to make people believe again. He realized words could do what weapons couldn't. They could control minds. Crowds grew larger. Voices turned into chants. A failed artist had transformed into a mesmerizing orator, capable of igniting millions with a single speech. His charisma became his weapon, and his voice became his army. Here's the lesson. Never underestimate the power of your voice. The words you speak can shape your destiny. They can heal or they can destroy. Hitler used his voice to rise from nothing. But when words are driven by ego, they can create chaos. He had found the key to influence, yet he was about to use it not to uplift the world, but to control it. And from that moment, the rise began. Part 4. The Vision Dream of a Powerful Nation. Every great movement begins with a dream, and Adolf Hitler had one that burned brighter than ever before. He saw a nation in pieces, a people drowning in shame after the First World War, and he made a promise to himself, "I will rebuild Germany. I will make it powerful again." That dream became his obsession. He spoke not just to minds, but to emotions. He told the people what they wanted to hear, that they were not defeated, that their pride could return, that they could rise from the ashes. He painted a picture so vivid that millions began to believe in it. He understood something most leaders never do. People don't follow plans. They follow vision. Vision gives direction when there is none. It gives hope when everything seems lost. And that's what he gave Germany, a vision of strength, unity, and revival. He gathered followers, built the Nazi Party, and started spreading his message across the nation. Each rally became bigger, louder, and more hypnotic. People who once felt hopeless began to see themselves as part of something great. That's how powerful belief can be. It can turn despair into destiny. But behind the fire of his speeches was a dangerous truth. His dream was built on domination, not compassion. He was not leading with love, but with control. His vision, once inspiring, began to twist into something darker. Still, the lesson remains. A clear vision can move mountains. It can awaken the sleeping and rebuild the broken. But a vision without morality becomes destruction disguised as destiny. Hitler proved that belief can build nations or burn them. And as his dream grew, so did his thirst for absolute power. The artist had become the leader, but soon the leader would become the dictator. Part 5. The Obsession. When vision turns dark, success can be a beautiful thing until it blinds you. When Adolf Hitler rose to power, his dream of rebuilding Germany had come true. The nation that once bowed in defeat now marched in perfect rhythm under his command. To the world, he was a man of destiny. To himself, he was unstoppable. But that's where greatness often falls, in the silence between achievement and humility. What began as a dream to rebuild his country turned into a dangerous obsession to control it. He stopped seeing himself as a man and started seeing himself as a savior. His speeches became louder, his decisions sharper, and his tolerance for opposition gone. The more power he gained, the less he listened. He surrounded himself with people who only agreed, who feared to speak the truth. That's when the vision turned into darkness. The dreamer had become consumed by his own creation. It's a reminder for all of us. Ambition is a gift, but obsession is a curse. When you lose balance, when your ego becomes your compass, even your greatest strengths turn against you. Hitler's mind, once disciplined and strategic, became driven by paranoia and pride. He wanted total control over people, over thoughts, over destiny. He began to believe he could shape the world itself. And when power meets ego, the result is destruction. There's a thin line between confidence and arrogance, between vision and obsession. Cross it, and you stop leading, you start dominating. Hitler's story in this moment teaches one crucial truth. Never let success silence your soul. The higher you rise, the more humility you need. Because no matter how powerful you become, once you stop listening, your fall has already begun. Part 6. The fall power has a price. For years, Adolf Hitler stood at the peak of power. His words ruled nations, his commands moved armies, and millions followed his vision without question. He believed he was untouchable, that destiny itself was in his hands. But life has a strange way of reminding even the greatest that no empire built on ego can stand forever. As World War II unfolded, his empire began to crack. The man who once conquered with confidence now ruled through fear. His once sharp instincts turned into paranoia. He stopped trusting his generals, ignored advice, and replaced reason with rage. His hunger for power had become a prison, and he was its prisoner. The world he tried to control started turning against him. His armies were stretched thin, his enemies grew stronger, and the people he claimed to lead began to suffer. Cities burned, soldiers fell, and the invincible leader started to crumble inside. That's the tragic irony of power. It isolates. The higher you climb without humility, the fewer real voices you hear. You become surrounded by echoes, not truth. And when truth disappears, so does wisdom. Hitler's downfall was not just a political defeat, it was a spiritual collapse. The man who once inspired millions ended up trapped in his own mind, consumed by fear and failure. The louder his power roared, the quieter his humanity became. His fall teaches one timeless truth. Pride is the most expensive luxury in life. It costs you relationships, peace, and ultimately yourself. He had built an empire that stretched across continents, yet he couldn't rule the chaos inside his own heart. And that's where every downfall begins, not outside, but within. The empire that was meant to last 1,000 years began to crumble, because its foundation was never built on truth. Part 7. The End Alone in the Bunker. It's April 1945. Berlin is burning. The empire that once ruled Europe is now reduced to rubble. Allied bombs shake the city as Soviet forces close in. Deep underground, in a cold concrete bunker, sits the man who once commanded millions, Adolf Hitler, a shadow of what he used to be. The walls that once echoed with his fiery speeches are now silent. The man who once dreamed of ruling the world can no longer rule his own fate. Outside, the sound of explosions. Inside, the sound of despair. The loyal followers he once inspired have abandoned him. The world he built on power and control has turned to dust. He sits at a small table, trembling hands holding a cup of tea, maps spread before him that no longer matter. His empire gone, his generals defeated, his people suffering. And the man who believed he could never lose is now surrounded by nothing but the ghosts of his own ambition. It's the ultimate truth of life. No matter how high you rise, if your heart is empty, you'll end up alone. Hitler had power, fame, and an army, but he lost the one thing that matters most: peace of mind. He once believed the world would remember him as a savior, but history remembered him as a warning. In his final moments, there was no applause, no crowd, no pride, only silence. The man who tried to control the world couldn't control himself. His end is more than a tragedy, it's a lesson. Power without compassion leads only to destruction. When you chase control instead of purpose, you end up controlling nothing at all. And so, the man who wanted to rule the world died trapped in his own creation, a bunker built by fear, buried beneath the weight of his own ego. Part 8. The Lessons. From darkness to awareness. Every story, no matter how dark, carries a lesson. Adolf Hitler's story is not one of glory, but of warning. A reminder that the same fire that can light the world can also burn it to ashes if not controlled. His life teaches us that belief is power. From a homeless painter to the ruler of a nation, his rise proves that the human mind, when focused, can achieve the impossible. But it also shows the danger of belief without morality. When passion loses purpose, greatness turns into destruction. He built an empire through discipline, vision, and persistence, the very traits that create success in any field. But without humility, even the strongest structure collapses. His story reminds us that the greatest enemy is not the world outside. It's the darkness within. Hitler's journey is proof that leadership without compassion is manipulation, and power without empathy becomes tyranny. His rise teaches us to dream big. His fall teaches us to stay grounded. His determination inspires. His downfall warns. So what should we learn from his story? Believe in your potential, even when the world rejects you. Build your dreams with strength, but never with hate. Lead with vision, but keep your heart open. And most importantly, master your mind before you try to master others. Because real power is not about control, it's about balance. The balance between confidence and humility, ambition and compassion, passion and peace. Hitler's story should never be repeated, but it should always be remembered, as a mirror reflecting what happens when ego replaces empathy. The final lesson is this: use your power to build, not destroy. Inspire, not control. Heal, not hurt. Because true greatness isn't about ruling the world, it's about ruling yourself. Adolf Hitler's story is a paradox, a story of incredible ambition, brilliance, and relentless drive, yet also of obsession, destruction, and ultimate loneliness. It shows us that the human mind is capable of unimaginable feats, but without guidance, it can also lead to devastating consequences. We see in his life that discipline, vision, and persistence can lift a person from nothing to unimaginable heights. From a rejected artist to a man who shook the world, his rise demonstrates the power of self-belief and focus. These are qualities that every one of us can cultivate. To chase dreams, to overcome obstacles, and to reach higher than we ever thought possible. But his fall is a warning louder than any success story. Ambition without empathy becomes tyranny, and power without humility destroys both the world and yourself. No matter how high you climb, if your mind is consumed by ego and your heart is empty, your empire will crumble. The real lesson here is balance. Believe in yourself, fight for your dreams, and pursue greatness, but never at the cost of your humanity. Let your vision inspire, not dominate. Let your power heal, not harm. History teaches us that true greatness isn't measured by control, fear, or dominance. It's measured by wisdom, compassion, and the positive mark you leave on the world. So take these lessons to heart. Let ambition fuel your journey, but let conscience guide your path. Master yourself, inspire others, and build something that lasts, not just in power, but in purpose. Because the greatest leaders, the truest achievers, are not those who rule the world, but those who rule themselves with strength, balance, and heart.